No one expected that the hellish day at 634 Bound Line Road, a peaceful residential area in the town of Wolcott, Connecticut, would become the scene of one of the most confusing family tragedies of 2025. Years later, the name Bound Line Road still evokes a special event in the hearts of the local investigative agency and the public. One spring day, when the cherry blossoms began to bloom right at the gate, the copper bell in the house rang out with a series of cold sounds. The incident happened in just a few minutes, but its consequences left a series of investigations, comparisons, and mental shock for those involved. March 27, 2025. At the Connecticut Emergency Response Center, a call came in a state of chaos. The voice on the line trembled. "I'm still in shock. What I just witnessed."
Wolcott 911.
Hi, I need police and ambulance.
What's going on?
3 people just got shot.
You got what?
3 people just got shot.
Okay, tell me exactly what happened. What happened?
I'm helping my friend move his parents out, and his father just shot his mom in front of us and then shot him.
Security cameras from the entrance showed 3 people entering the house in the late afternoon. Within hours, the furniture was loaded into a truck. Then suddenly the door slammed shut. The lights went out. The silence was broken by a deafening clang. Then more clangs followed. The authorities arrived at the scene in the shortest time possible. In that house, 3 bodies were discovered. One of the 3 was the person who called 911, a friend of the homeowner's son. He was sitting in a chair, his face pale and lifeless. The story behind what happened in that house is a breathtaking family tragedy, translated by the details that investigators painstakingly pieced together. And today we will recount, from beginning to end, a case that has caused long-lasting trouble in the hearts of society and the families of those left behind. The Coate family lives in the town of Wolcott, a suburban area in the state of Connecticut, known for its peaceful life and many middle-class families. The beginning of the story is David Coate Sr., 59 years old, a self-made businessman. He is the founder and operator of Lighthouse Fuel, LLC, a fuel supply business that was dissolved a few years ago. His wife, Mrs. Michelle Coate, 55 years old, is a civil servant at the Connecticut Department of Corrections. She is considered by her colleagues to be serious, dedicated, and especially interested in the welfare of workers in the system. Their son, David Coate Jr., 34 years old, is living with his wife and young daughter in Colchester, not far from Wolcott. David Jr. works as an auto technician and is considered a filial son, hard-working and always ready to support his family. This family seemed to have it all: careers, jobs, and a reputation in the community. But behind the surface, cracks in the marital relationship were slowly becoming apparent. David and Michelle's marriage was on the brink of collapse, cemented by divorce filings and the decision to sell their home. Initial reports suggested the split was amicable, but for those involved, emotions and conflicts seemed to be quietly building up for an unforeseen event. Before March 27th, the Coate family's life, although no longer peaceful, still maintained a semblance of stability. After reaching the decision to divorce, David Coate Sr. and Michelle Coate still tried to maintain minimal cooperation in dividing assets and preparing for the sale of the family home. Both sides respected the legal agreements. David was allowed to keep his legal firearms collection and would be the first to leave the house. David Jr., the only son, always acted as a bridge between his parents. He was calm, responsible, and wanted everything to happen peacefully so that his parents would not suffer further trauma. During this time, he often visited the house on Bound Line Road to help his father move things and handle paperwork related to the property. He also brought a close friend to assist, who later became the only witness. As for Michelle, despite the divorce, she continued to work at the Department of Corrections and had many plans for herself after selling the house. Neighbors said she remained calm, communicated politely, and showed no signs of unusual anxiety. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, with the hope that the separation would open up a new life for both parties. But during the final cleanup, a seemingly harmless act, that tranquility was suddenly broken. On the afternoon of March 27, 2025, David Coate Sr. returned to the home at 634 Bound Line Road with his son David Jr. and a friend. The main purpose of the meeting was to complete the cleaning of the property, preparing for the transfer of the house. Michelle Coate was also present at the scene to coordinate and supervise the final steps in dividing the belongings. Initially, the atmosphere among the members was relatively peaceful. Each person focused on their own tasks, hoping that the cleaning would end in an orderly manner. However, a minor disagreement arose between David and Michelle regarding the ownership of some items in the house. The discussion began to show signs of tension, although no one in the group thought the situation could get out of control. David Jr., wishing to ease the atmosphere, intervened in the conversation, but his presence seemed to only complicate the situation. In a split second, Mr. David suddenly acted in an unexpected way. Meanwhile, David Jr.'s friend, who had a self-defense license, reacted to protect himself and those around him. In just a few minutes, what had been a family situation turned into a serious incident. The calm of the house was replaced by chaos, opening the way for a lengthy investigation and many regrets to come. Immediately after the incident, David Jr.'s friend, in a state of panic but maintaining the necessary level of consciousness, immediately called the emergency operator 911. The voice on the phone was recorded as shaky but clear, reporting that there were 3 seriously injured people in the house, including David Sr. and 2 other family members. Within minutes of the call, Wolcott Township Police arrived at the scene. They immediately blocked off the entire area around the house on Bound Line Road to ensure safety and control the situation. Medical staff and rescue teams also quickly arrived at the scene, but confirmed that all 3 victims showed no signs of life when approached. At the scene, the friend, also the only survivor of the incident, was taken away for psychological support and initial statements. He was not physically injured, but was clearly deeply affected mentally by what had just happened. The Wolcott Police Department's investigation team, in conjunction with the Connecticut State Police Major Crimes Unit, secured the scene overnight. Forensic experts quickly moved in and began an investigation of the home. They noted the location of the victims, traces related to self-defense tools, as well as any physical evidence present in the area where the incident occurred. The home showed no signs of forced entry or disturbance from the outside, which reinforced the initial assumption that this was an internal incident without third-party intervention. All doors were locked from the inside. On the living room table, some papers related to property division procedures and legal documents were still intact. The 3 bodies were identified as Michelle Coate, David Coate Sr., and David Coate Jr. Each person was located in a different location on the ground floor of the house, indicating that the incident happened very quickly and there was no time for a prolonged reaction. An autopsy was performed at the medical examiner's office the following morning. Preliminary reports indicate that Michelle and David Jr. were both fatally injured shortly after the incident began. David Sr. also died as a result of a defensive reaction from his son's friend. All injuries were confirmed to have been caused by legally registered self-defense weapons. The initial conclusions from the medical examiner and the police were consistent with the sole testimony from the witness, paving the way for further investigation to clarify the entire incident. Immediately after securing the scene and removing the victims, authorities quickly entered the investigation phase. The Connecticut State Police Major Crimes Unit was called in to assist the Wolcott Township Police. Given the seriousness and far-reaching impact of the incident, the case was quickly classified as a special investigation. From the initial testimony of David Jr.'s companion, investigators had a clear timeline and a relatively coherent sequence of events. They compared this account with the evidence at the scene: security cameras, location of physical evidence, biological traces, and especially the 911 call, considered a key supporting factor in the process of verifying the truth. The camera at the house recorded the image of 3 people entering, with no signs of an initial argument. Audio from the recording device in the house, installed by David Sr. himself, was also extracted. The audio shows a tense exchange that quickly turned complicated, as the witness described. In addition, the investigating agency also conducted background checks and self-defense tool ownership licenses for Mr. David Sr. and his friend. The results confirmed that both were legally registered, had no criminal records or signs of involvement in behavior that exceeded the law. In this case, there were no suspects alive other than David Jr.'s friend, who was considered the only witness. However, because the use of a self-defense tool resulted in the death of a person, this person was still subject to standard investigative steps. The police briefly detained this person for investigation procedures and conducted tests, analyzed biological samples, and seized related tools for examination. During the entire process of working with the authorities, this person cooperated fully, remained calm, and provided detailed information. The investigation file was reinforced by forensic documents, legal analysis, psychological assessments, and conclusions from multiple independent parties. After synthesizing all the evidence, the investigating agency concluded that the witness's actions were in a reasonable self-defense situation, without signs of exceeding the limits permitted under Connecticut law. Therefore, no criminal prosecution decision is made against the survivors. Instead, they are considered to be assisting the investigation and are important witnesses in the case summary file. After being brought to the Wolcott Police Department in stable condition, the friend who accompanied David Jr. officially entered the questioning process. This was an especially important step because he was the only living witness present at the scene during the entire time of the incident. The interrogation took place with the participation of investigators from the Wolcott Police Department and his legal representative. At the beginning, he recounted the entire schedule of the day, from the time he and David Jr. arrived at the house until the unexpected incident occurred. His voice was clear, uninterrupted, showing cooperation and transparency. According to the testimony, when the argument between Mr. David Sr. and Mrs. Michelle began to become tense, he and David Jr. both tried to calm the situation. However, no one could have expected Mr. David to act so unexpectedly. When he saw Mrs. Michelle and David Jr. was attacked, he was forced to use the self-defense tools he had on him, with a valid permit, to stop the situation from continuing. Investigators asked detailed questions about the location, timing, and actions of each person in the house. Each statement was recorded, videotaped, and carefully compared with evidence from the scene, such as cameras, fingerprints, and 911 calls. The consistency between his statement and the facts collected played a key role in determining the nature of the incident, reinforcing the initial assessment that this was a self-defense situation. After collecting statements, examining the scene, and conducting forensic examinations, the investigation team began to consolidate the case file. This is an important step to complete the entire legal process while ensuring that all aspects of the case are clarified and recorded in a transparent and complete manner. The investigation agency systematized all the evidence collected, including security camera data at the house, 911 call recordings, crime scene and autopsy results, images of related traces, as well as physical evidence found at the scene. Each element was carefully analyzed and cross-referenced with the only testimony from the witness. In addition, the background information of all three victims, history of owning self-defense tools, legal licenses, and all documents related to the divorce process between Mr. David Sr. and the victim were also collected, and Michelle were collected and included in the case file. Investigators also consulted with legal and psychological experts to assess the mental state of the parties involved at the time of the incident. After careful compilation and review, the official file was completed with a preliminary conclusion. This was an internal family incident, arising from a personal conflict and handled in a reasonable defense manner. This file will be the legal basis for announcing the official investigation conclusion and notifying the public in a clear and transparent manner. Since the primary suspect in the case, David Coates Sr., is no longer alive, the case will not proceed to a normal criminal trial. However, to ensure transparency and compliance with the law, the authorities will still hold a preliminary hearing to announce the investigation results and answer questions from the community, the press, and other interested parties. The hearing will be held at the New Haven County Superior Court, where the presiding judge will receive the investigation file from the Wolcott Police Department and representatives of the Connecticut State Attorney's Office. During this hearing, the entire course of events will be presented in detail based on the evidence collected, including witness statements, forensic analysis, and data from the scene. David Jr.'s companion, who is considered the only witness, will also be called to clarify some details. He will continue to confirm his previous statements and express his cooperation with the law enforcement agencies. The investigating agency representative emphasized that his actions were consistent with Connecticut's self-defense law. After considering all the factors, the judge concluded that there was no basis for criminal prosecution of the surviving witness. The case file was remanded to the judicial archives as a typical case of tragedy arising from uncontrolled domestic conflict. The hearing ended in a quiet atmosphere, leaving many to reflect on the complexity of family relationships and the value of early intervention in situations that show signs of breaking down. The tragedy that occurred at the small house on Bound Line Road not only left behind 3 lives, but also a profound loss for relatives, friends, and the entire community that knew the Coate family. A filial son, a devoted mother, and a successful husband, all are gone, leaving behind an irreparable void. David Jr.'s small family, especially his young wife and young daughter, will forever carry the memory of a husband and father who passed away in an undesirable situation. The only surviving friend must also continue to live with psychological trauma and the heavy feeling of having been present at that fateful moment. These are wounds that will not easily heal, no matter how much time passes. From this heartbreaking incident, an important lesson is learned. Family conflicts, if not resolved properly, can lead to serious and irreversible consequences. Signs of stress, emotional trauma, or long-standing disagreements should not be ignored or taken lightly. Seeking help from a mental health professional, a lawyer, or a loved one is essential to keeping everyone safe. Behind every statistic are real people with their own feelings and fates. The Coate family's story is more than an investigative document. It is a poignant reminder of the value of understanding and dialogue within families.